I don't know dimension.
Luke, do you have any thoughts on dimension?
It's an ornamental herbicide. I don't know why they had it on the contest. So,
There we go.
Right. Well, because they're the Northeast and they do more ornamental stuff than we do.
but there's no ornamentals in the spring.
It's a lot like pendimethalin, but stronger.
Is it plant free?
Yeah.
I don't know. You're just going to have to look at. You're going to have to look at this plot in Western and sort of make a, on your chart, add to it, and figure out what it controls. I don't.
Last year it was actually much better and wiped out almost everything. But the corn looks kind of rough this year, although it took something to spray next year. So again,
I really can't. I can't shed any light. Okay. Prowl is essentially it's a bean herbicide. It's also labeled for corn pre-emergence. And this is one that you can get some. Not like that. You can't. Clubbed roots. No, I don't think you're going to get any here. If this is one that if you come into the plot and you see a plant pulled up and it's got these sort of swollen root tips, that's Prowl, but it won't necessarily do that. The difference is Prowl's labeled on a bunch of minor crops. It's labeled on just tons and tons of vegetables and ornamentals. So it's the one of the three that's most likely. You can see it left a bunch of the sort of alternative crops. It left this, it left the sunflower. Command probably will do something to the sunflower, and I don't remember, probably did something to this. Prowl, aside from that, again, Command's good on velvet leaf, Prowl's not. Command's lousy on pigweed, Prowl's good on pigweed, and then, Dual's sort of somewhere in the middle. Dual's safe on both corn and beans. Again, you're going to have those three. I think you're going to have to put them side by side on the chart and say, okay, this is what I'm looking for to separate these three. You can see the Prowl's also safe on the wheat, and the Command and the Dual probably will do something to the wheat. Where's the Dual? It's vanished.
you can see it more earlier, but there was some of this sorghum that was speculated purple positive deficiency.
There's your Dual over there. See what I mean? Those two plots are. Those two plots are fairly similar, right? So that's what you're faced with. So this comes down to, okay, the Dual.
It's kind of frying the canola. Yeah.
Yeah. The Dual did a pretty good number in the canola. The Prowl not as much. But if you're walking through this plot from front to back, you're not seeing basically no differences through there. When you get to the broadleafs, Dual's not typically good on lamb's quarter. Prowl is pretty good on lamb's quarter, so that's a separator. So that's sort of what I'm talking about. You got two plots that look very similar there, and you're going to have to know. You may not see any symptoms at all. You're going to have to know the two or three key species to separate those two. What's this one in the middle? You have atrazine here and metribuzin over there, and atrazine is a broader spectrum herbicide than metribuzin, especially across a range of broadleafs. I'll try to pick out some differences here. Having said that, atrazine can be a little bit weak on velvet leaf, but you don't see it weak here. So depending on how much water they've had, they can look very similar. Metribuzin really should start to let tomatoes through, for example. Morning Glory should come through metribuzin. Velvet leaf can. Whereas atrazine, should do a decent job on Morning Glory and generally show more activity on broadleafs. And of course, atrazine will have considerable activity on the soybeans, although it's always amazing. Sometimes they'll come through pretty well. You see them here coming through pretty well. And in some atrazine plots, you'd be able to look and see chlorosis symptoms on the older leaves of the soybeans still. And you really don't see any here. The other thing, just a reminder, when you're walking through these plots, is you sort of have maximum activity in the middle of the plot. So don't forget to look on the edge, the fringe of the plots, where you might see, where when a herbicide's been extremely active and just annihilated everything. As you start to get to the edge of where they've treated, that can be a really good area to look for some symptomology when a herbicide's been real active, to look for the more sort of marginal symptoms and say, okay, well, beans have been annihilated here, but I see the chlorosis over here, so I think there's a good chance this is atrazine. So you're trying to use symptomology and spectrum of control to get you into the family, and then you're going to try to separate. So that's sort of atrazine and metribuzin. Atrazine basically is safe on corn, sorghum. It has activity on almost all the other grasses you're going to have here and broadleafs. So you can have an atrazine plot with a lot of activity that just basically annihilates everything, you know, but it's not a tremendous grass herbicide. You should start to see grass survive it in some case. If you back up, the difference between this and the metribuzin actually has a label pre on wheat, if I remember right. So you can see the wheat surviving, soybeans obviously, and you can start to see some other species come through the metribuzin. Like I said, you'll see morning glory come through it. It looks like the sunflowers are surviving it pretty well. Metribuzin's not tremendously amazing on composite species, cockleburr, ragweeds, things like that. So you'll start to see some come through. But given that, you can see the atrazine and the metribuzin do look fairly similar in terms of grass control. But I'd expect to see more grass coming through the metribuzin. So just to let you know, you know, there's you may or may not see a lot of differences, and I don't see any symptomology. I don't see any photosynthesis inhibitor symptomology here at all from these. So here's the command. You've got a couple of things. Let's see, command and balance are out here pre, right?
Yeah.
And they're both pigment inhibitors, which means they'll bleach tissue, turn it white. Balance is safe on corn, command is not, and you will. This is one that you should see as you look at the margins. Still some possibly white corn leaves, or the more sensitive species. As the dose goes down, you might see some white. Here's some. Sometimes you can see on the larger species that are kind of tolerant, it'll suck up some command and turn the newer growth white, or the older growth. But so you might see that. Beyond that, the spectrum of control is it's good on lamb's quarter, rotten on pigweed. Again, this is one you're going to try to separate this from balance, and the difference is the activity. Balance will probably take out the beans, and then you're going to try to separate command from dual and prow. They're all labeled for soybeans. They're all grass herbicides that have some broadleaf activity. All right, so command will take out velvet leaf, lamb's quarter, leave the pigweed. This is really fast, I know. Dual will leave the velvet leaf and the lamb's quarter, take out the pigweed, and prow will leave the velvet leaf, take out the pigweed and the lamb's quarter. Everybody got that? All right.
Put that on my iPod for the ride up.
That's one that you're going to have to. Again, you're going to look at it and say, okay, you know, did it kill it didn't basically kill the corn or the beans, because all three of those herbicides, the command, you should see some white from the command, but then you're like, okay, this is probably a grass herbicide. I don't see much grass, right? It's doing a good job. So then I'm going to key in on the broadleaves, and what you see here is tons of pigweed coming through the command. So as soon as you see all that pigweed coming through, you see any white symptoms at all, that's pretty much command. Okay? And again, balance could be similar, but it should control the pigweed pretty well. It should control the other, was that squash, pumpkins pretty well. And then balance, you should see some symptoms on the beans. We'll see if we can see some. Valor is a pre-emergent soybean herbicide, although it has a label for corn too, so you can expect the corn possibly to be stunted or possibly not. It has to be applied like about a week ahead of corn planting. So it has some safety issues. I'm trying to think of what you'd have to separate it. You're probably trying to separate it. It's applied pre. You'd be trying to separate it from atrazine possibly and Sencor. It's kind of a funny herbicide. It can actually do. You can see it's doing a pretty nice job on grasses here, and it can do that. You know, it's more of a broadleaf herbicide. You apply pre, or may or may not really see any symptoms. I don't really see anything here that's really representative. I think for me on this one, what I expect this to come out and see, 3 weeks after it's been applied, is I think you're going to have to look at the spectrum and say, okay, what I see here indicates to me this is valid. Serpin's a pre-emergence PPO inhibitor like Valor. It's labeled for corn and beans, but you may see symptoms on the beans at this rate, if this is the rate they're going to use. I don't see any here. It basically doesn't control grasses, but at that rate, it might take out all the other broadleaves. Did a nice job on the sunflower. It'll probably take out the velvet leaf, the lamb's quarter, the pigweed, possibly the morning glory. You know, you make it, I don't know, it is labeled on wheat, so this may be one that you look at and say, okay, balance. I got okay on corn, beans, and wheat. I'm not seeing very much on grasses, and it's doing a pretty good job on the rest of the broadleafs. Then you may have to try to separate that from something else. And again, we do it a Western. We may find a weed that's a key difference there. And again, possibly the canola. Okay, here's balance, which is the other pre-emergence bleaching inhibition of chlorophyll synthesis. So it's going to turn things white. And really, the beans will probably be pretty much hammered. I'm amazed those live. The balance. And you might on the edge of the plot see the beans with the white symptoms on the leaves. Not really see the white, but the balance is, the command will probably injure the corn, turn some white, turn it white some. The balance won't turn it white. Balance should nail the beans. Balance is really a pretty decent grass and broadleaf herbicide. So if you look through your weeds, I'm not sure you're going to see a lot of difference in the weeds. You'll see morning glory come through, both of them probably.
Yeah.
You know, it may come down to something like this. I don't remember what the command did on this. You guys remember?
I don't remember. Bless you.
But I would key in on corn and beans with this. Once you see some white symptoms and you're thinking, okay, I know this was applied pre-emergence, I'd probably study the corn and beans pretty closely and then move off that. Also, I think the command, you're likely to see the wheat come up and turn white. Okay, whether it's outgrown that at that point is kind of debatable. All right. Select Max, you've only got one post-grass herbicide on here, right? That's right. So that probably means they won't put it on the contest. It's too easy. Okay.
Totally.
Select, Fusion, Post, that whole class. You got Select. Should control pretty much all your grasses. It probably will even nail the wheat. One of the things you're always looking for on Select, and what happens in this contest is, I'll try to dig some roots up here, but people, sometimes they'll let you dig roots, so the first person that does it, they'll stick it in a cup so that not every plant's gone by the time you get there. They still do that.
Yeah.
And then sometimes you'll see this. Let me see if we can get it to do it. No.
That was lame.
Let's see. I can't get it to do it.
If it works, it's a great injury.
When you pull the Select, the whirl of the corn out with Select after it's been on, yes, even 7 to 10 days, even less, it'll be all rotted down in there because it affects lipid development down there in the base of the whirl. So if you come up to a plot, or if you're the first group, pull the whirl. Right? But if you come up to it and yeah, there it is. And you see somebody's pulled it out and it's lying there and it's rotten. That's Select, and it's the only herbicide on the whole list that'll do that, which makes me think they probably won't put it in.
Well, sometimes they throw a gimme on there.
Okay. So, but it controls pretty much all the grasses. No effect on broadleafs at all, period. Unless the solvent burns them.
Forest Classic.
Okay, so in this example, Classic's pretty negligible activity on grasses. And you know, you can't use Classic on corn, but it may or may not stun it. But the lamb's quarters is a key indicator, especially if you're trying to separate Classic and Harmony GT. That shouldn't be that hard, but Harmony GT will get the lamb's quarter at least severely stunned. The Classic shouldn't get it at all. Okay. I forget in the crop sequence, it looks like it got most of the crops. I would expect most of the time it would probably kill sunflower. That's kind of an anomaly. Sunflower. This is a
ALS resistant rake.
variety of sunflower here, surviving some things out of it. But you know, all the ALS inhibitors, especially on the margins, you're looking for stunning, some kind of slight off-color yellowing, possibly some leaf distortion, some purpling on leaves. But you know, if you see that whole class of that type of thing, it's that's an ALS inhibitor. I'll try to find some more symptoms as we go down. Permit's one of the ALS inhibitors. And again, I think you pretty much just have to memorize the difference between them. Permit will nail the beans, right? Beans are gone, right?
Right.
Corn's there. It's a corn herbicide, and it's also used on some vegetables. You can see it's nailing the sunflower. You can see, of course, one of the big weaknesses of Permit here as well. Lamb's quarter. So, you know, you could look at this. Permit will also take out the nut sedge. You know, one of the things you might confuse it with would be Classic, because Classic will let all that lamb's quarter through and also get the nut sedge, but Classic will leave what? Soybeans, right? So that's one of the key differences there. Permit really should nail the beans. Really doesn't have any grass activity, so Classic might be the thing that you're trying to separate that from the most. I think, again, that comes down to sort of your your hierarchy of walking into your plot, where you're saying, okay, is it pre or post? Can I discern from the plot what it's labeled on? Like, if it's extremely safe on corn, I got to think corn herbicide, and then start looking at spectrum of control and injury symptoms. Okay, so that you should separate that from classic sort of at that second step. This is the accent, right? Mode of action, right? Was applied what? Pre, post? Post, mode of action.
ALS
inhibitor, right? So we saw that same thing with pursuit, right? You see it here. Accent's essentially a grass herbicide, and I don't know why it's symptoms on the corn. You shouldn't see any symptoms on the corn. It should about kill the beans. It'll be like permit on the beans. It's one of those that. These are really good symptoms, actually. We saw this with pursuit too. That purpling on the sorghum, that's sort of a dead giveaway that it's either pursuit or accent. Accent should be a little stronger on sorghum than pursuit is. You can see on the wheat some of the same symptoms. When you go to separate this from pursuit, there'll be a couple, I can't remember what they are, a couple key differences in crop sensitivity, broadleaf crop sensitivity, and also weed sensitivity. They're both weak on lamb's quarters. They're both pretty good on pigweed and morning glory. Velvet leaf will come through the accent, but pursuit will do a decent job on the velvet leaf. So you're going to look for some differences like that. But again, when you walk into a plot like this, you take your first look, you're like, okay, it's post, you see that sorghum, should be a giveaway, right? It's purple, it's stunted. When I'm looking at something like pursuit, accent, and then, you know, follow the rest of your clues and try to figure out what's going on there. So. Okay. All right, there's another one of your ALS inhibitors. This is actually a nice plot here, and you should see this with the classic, but one of the things on ALS inhibitors, I talked about stunted, yellow, purple, right? One of the things ALS inhibitors will do to sunflower, classic will do it, pursuit can do it, this can do it, is they kill the meristem. I mean, one of my not famous comments, I like to comment that then it's, you know, the plant is essentially dead, it just doesn't know it yet. So when you look at sunflower, and if they have cocklebur, it'll take the meristem out and kill it. Basically, it's a symptom of an ALS inhibitor, and the rest of the plant hasn't even had time to die. So if you see that on sunflower, that's a giveaway on an ALS inhibitor. Harmony GT, no activity on grasses, safe on corn and beans, although it can turn beans yellow. And should take out lamb's quarter, pigweed, velvet leaf, and leaf. And has some activity on morning glory. It should leave most of the others. As you can see, it's nailing the sunflower. And I've got some activity on the canola. I'm trying to think, you know, this is one you could have a hard time separating it from classic. Classic controls nutsedge and this doesn't, so that's sort of going to be a key differentiator there. Classic doesn't control lamb's quarter. This does a reasonable job on it. So again, you're looking for post. What's my symptom? What's my category of herbicide action? And then sort of getting into the crop sensitivity, and then, you know, then my spectrum of control. Can I figure out what the difference is? And I think those ALS inhibitors for me, and along with the glyphosate and the tamoxifen, can be some of the tougher ones to take. What's the rate of pursuit? All these ALS inhibitors, they're applied post. Pursuit controls grasses and broadleaves. Accent controls primarily grasses and a few broadleaves. Pursuit, you know, it may stunt the corn and it may not. But what should happen here is the accent, I don't know where the accent plot is down here, it should nail the beans. So pursuit, you'll probably see beans fine, corn possibly looking okay. The other weakness of pursuit, depending on size, is lamb's quarter. And then pursuit should take out most of the other broadleaves. So talk about velvet leaf and pigweed, you said. They're in there for your other weeds, right? Should take those out pretty well. But again, here's I think this is the best plot to probably show this. Here's your sort of ALS inhibitor stunning, purpling. Okay, not everything turns purple like that, but that's sort of the type of symptom you're looking for.
Yeah, the sorghum.
We'll see.
Sorghum.
Yeah. The sorghum.
What's it labeled for?
Pursuit's labeled for soybeans. Yeah. And it can do that to the sorghum, but it shouldn't be as hot on the sorghum as the accent. So again, you know, I view this one as I'm trying to separate this from accent. It's kind of design, right? That's sort of my thought train on this. And So you can key in on the sorghum. The accent really should nail the sorghum completely. Accent should leave velvet leaf, should leave pigweed possibly. So you're going to have to again look at your spectrum control there. But for ALS inhibitors, again, you shouldn't be able to look on the edge of the plot and see some of this sort of purple and stunning and that type of thing. The next two, these two can be real difficult, I find. 2,4-D and dicamba, they're both growth regulators, both broadleaf herbicides. They're both safe on corn and sorghum. They both take out most of the broadleafs, and what you're going to look for, though, you can generally get pretty close to the mode of action from some twisting. You know, growth regulators 2,4-D, everybody knows it twists things up, turns things upside down. I still think it's remarkable how you didn't get any symptoms out here. Here you go.
There's some on that one too.
There's a little
Cupping
bit.
of leaves. So what you should see is some things, some weird growth, some cupping of leaves. But this is one that you're going to have to pretty much, again, memorize the difference between the two in terms of control. So you can see, for example, the canola's surviving the dicamba barely. It didn't survive the 2,4-D. Will that happen in the contest? I'm not sure, but you want to have a note on that. Same thing. You shouldn't have any activity on grasses, but I'll just warn you that if you do 2,4-Ds, probably a little more likely to cause. They both can sort of cause some kind of weird stuff on grass. It sort of flattens out, kind of gets like that. So you might see that. But what you really should see is one. The edge of the plot is plants that are sort of bent over, and the leaves are kind of cupped and stuff like that. So I don't think once you should see enough symptoms somewhere with that plot that you can tell it's a growth regulator, and then you're just trying to tell which one.
It's ridiculous is what it is. It's damn Jim Canal. It's the curse. Or who was the weatherman who was out here? Ben Gelber.
Oh, here you go.
That was trees though.
Some good nasty.
It's all his fault.
This was a dicamba, so I'm just kind of blowing.
Yeah.
So here's what I'm talking about. See that?
Yeah, that's gnarly.
Kind of flipped over.
Just hold it for a second without moving it.
It's 2,4-D. It's dicamba.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah,
Good
2,4-D
specimen.
player. This is clarity. So, like I said, you're going to see, if it's a canola, you need to probably key in on what the difference is, and whether it's which one it is. Massagran, foliar applied herbicide, post-emergence contact herbicide, can cause bronzing on the beans. I think it's really remarkable. I have no idea how you guys sprayed all this stuff and didn't get a symptom at all.
Yeah, I know. It's
Actually really unbelievable.
Mark.
You have one?
A little bit down there on the, and then down here on this pigweed down here.
It should be some that kind of thing. You can see them.
You just up there.
You can see some on the old
Oh,
leaves.
son of a. Look at the wrong one.
This is one of those
Look
ones
at the
that you're trying to
camera.
separate this from Cobra and some other post-emergence herbicides.
Yeah,
Bassagran is safe on both corn and beans. Okay, really very safe. You won't see near as much burn on the leaves of the beans as you will with Cobra and some other herbicides. You shouldn't see anything on the corn at all. It's basically, as you can see, it doesn't control grasses. Another key indicator here is that it shouldn't control pigweed. Again, this will be on your spreadsheet. It shouldn't control lamb's quarters. Usually is kind of miserable on ragweed. I don't know what was in its feeds.
Lamb's quarter, pigweed, velvet leaves on there. Cockleburr, no.
Not sunflower.
Yellow nutsedge is.
Pretty good on the composite family, so it should take out sunflowers. It's good on nutsedge. That's a key indicator for Bassagran. It's good on nutsedge.
Dew grasses.
Okay.
Morning glories.
So that's one of those ones that for me, I'm going to look and memorize the spectrum of control. So that when I look at it, I'm going to go, okay, safe on corn, safe on beans, nailed nutsedge, missed lamb's quarter, pigweed, Bassagran. Okay, that's the type. Bucktrill is another post herbicide, and actually it's more or less the same mode of action as Bassagran. The difference is Bucktrill nailed the beans, or it should have, right?
Yeah.
Beans up. So it should have really, yeah. Pretty much took out the soybeans. And it should
guy growing back there.
It should get most of the other weeds here, depending on how big they are. You start to see big weeds, like you see the lamb's quarter out there. It's a contact herbicide, so depending on how big their weeds and crops were, when they start to get bigger than about that, you can start to see some survive. But you should see more or less total broadleaf control, no activity on grasses, and it should nail the beans, which will differentiate these two. Now, it's also Bassagran, of course, is weaker on pigweed and lamb's quarter.
really kind of not bleach, but just
Glyphosate,
like something
what you should see is yellowing in the new growth, and then followed by the plant just kind of sits there and eventually dies. Right, so you're not, whereas with Ignite and Gramoxone, you'll have actual symptoms on leaves, white, yellow, and then burning in the case of Ignite, and burning in the case of Gramoxone. You should not see that with glyphosate. You know, what you pretty much should just see is, and again, I would look on the edge of the plot, I don't see anything Again, plants, you know, they won't show those leaf symptoms, but you should see pretty much complete control. It should be one of the only herbicides giving you this this level of control.
Yeah.
Okay, I talked about Ignite, Roundup, and Gramoxone, right? Everybody know what those are? Glufosinate, glyphosate, paraquat. Glyphosate's systemic, okay? Ignite is not, and paraquat is not. Ignite causes, the mode of action is it inhibits the nitrogen process in the plant, so it has a buildup of ammonium. And depending on what kind of corn it is,
Last year they did separate.
you can see a little bit of it there. Oh, last year they had both?
They had Liberty Link, Roundup, and conventional.
What you'll see on the corn, if it's not Liberty Link, is sort of a like nitrogen burn on corn, kind of. And then along the side, you can see the same type of thing. It's not really a contact burn like Gramoxone. Okay, Gramoxone's basically going to turn tissue brown, right? There's not really a yellow then a brown. It's brown. It kind of sits there and does that. What you're going to see with I guess that would be the Ignite is sort of a kind of a yellowish, and then the tissue turns brown and dies. So you can see some of those yellow symptoms, which is the buildup of the ammonium in there. Here's another example of it. Okay, a little bit of yellowing on the leaves. Again, the activity of these three can be all over the board. You should see glyphosate be the most effective. What glyphosate, depending on what kind of corn they have, if they have Roundup, Pretty, Liberty Link, and regular corn, that'll make it kind of interesting. But that may be your separator. You should see the Roundup really be the most effective across the board. You'll start to see wheat and some grass species possibly survive the Gramoxone and the Ignite. Liberty, what are they called? Ignite.
Everything is just normal.
Ignite, one of the weaknesses of Ignite, you want to make a note of this, is lamb's quarters. Okay, Ignite, lamb's quarters can be kind of weak on that depending on weather and rain and things like that. But those three, I think, can be hard to separate. So I'd key in on lamb's quarter. And then if they have those three types of corn, you should be able to look at that and say, okay,
Well, what do they call it? It's Ignite.
this corn survived Ignite, this corn didn't. And Gramoxone,
Last
of course,
year,
should nail all
everything
the
looked like it was not burned as with fire, but it just like nothing like.
Gramoxone, and again, I mean, it's pretty similar to the Ignite. Glyphosate was probably the most effective of the three broad spectrum herbicides and non-selectives. I don't know what to tell you on this because, if they spray on a 90-degree day with lots of humidity, Gramoxone and Ignite can both look like glyphosate. I mean, they can just fry the heck out of everything. So I think you need to, I don't know exactly what to tell you. You may be able to look at if they have different types of corn, if they give you Roundup Ready corn, Liberty Link corn, regular corn. The Gramoxone really should have activity on all of them. One of the key differences there between this and glyphosate is Gramoxone rarely completely kills corn. Okay, when you go to look at the corn in this plot, you're still going to see corn that's just like this, probably stunted, burnt. Look at the edge of the plot, and you'll probably see that glyphosate. It should be gone. The conventional corn should pretty much be gone. Ignite, same thing. Ignite on conventional corn that's not Liberty Link. It may still be there. It'll be kind of burnt. That's what we saw back there, right? Kind of surviving it. It was still sort of burnt. So, and I don't know what else to say. Key differences. I'd have to refresh my memory on it. I think you're going to be looking for symptomology here, and if they give you different types of corn, that may be one of your dead giveaways on it. So, I think I remember struggling in various contests with this versus glyphosate. They can really look remarkably similar sometimes. Two post-pigment inhibitors, okay, command and balance or pre-emergence pigment inhibitors, and then you have Callisto, and all the way down on the end, you have Impact, and they're both post-emergence, and this is probably some of the better symptoms. Obviously that, you can see how the sunflower's got that sort of white yellowish sort of tint to it. You should see the beans nailed, and these are actually pretty good symptoms. Here, the white. You should see the white in there. You should see the beans. They're both corn herbicides, so the corn should be safe. The sorghum's probably safe. They have Impact's to get to the end. Impact's got decent grass activity, and Callisto really doesn't. But I will tell you, is crabgrass one of your indicators?
Yeah.
Crabgrass is a depending on which one they use. Impact's probably kind of so-so on the crabgrass, and Callisto should not control any grasses, except it can control crabgrass pretty well. So that's one that you're going to be looking at saying, okay, I think it might be Impact or Callisto. Let's go to the crabgrass, and if it's surviving the backing up. If it's not controlling hardly any grasses, but I've got sort of a strip of crabgrass missing or with symptoms, well, that's probably Callisto, whereas Impact should have activity on most of the grasses. Again, Callisto primarily broadleaves, so trying to think of the separation with the weeds that you have. It'll probably do a pretty decent job on all the weeds, and probably the Impact one too. So you're looking at for the symptoms and the difference in the grass control. It'll be a big giveaway. They both should nail beans. But you can see the beans are still there, and you can see some white, and you can tell they were sprayed post, so that should be an indicator that you're looking at one of those two herbicides. So, okay. Neither one of them is any good on that sedge. And finally, Impact, which we talked about a little bit. See that white? Right? Post-emergence pigment inhibitor. Similar to Callisto. Again, it should nail the beans, should nail the sunflower. So I just stepped in your. You're looking for that white off, possibly yellowish, but that white color. They're both systemic. I think we're going to have to take a look at the other plot too. Impact controls foxtail pretty well. Barnyard grass okay, can get a little weak on crabgrass. Callisto doesn't have any activity on most grasses, but has some activity on crabgrass. You should say generally safety to the corn on the one. And it should have activity, and again, if you're looking on the edge of the plot, here it is right here. On the mare's tail there, you're looking on the edge of a plot and you're seeing some symptoms like that. You should be thinking, okay, post-emergence pigment inhibitor, Callisto or Impact, and what's my difference in grass control? Maybe what it comes down to. And that's pretty quick and dirty.